Premier Ford calls Greg Rickford the Minister of Everything, and the Minister of Indigenous Services, the Minister of Energy, and the Minister of Northern Development and Mines, who was in Thunder Bay and Northwestern Ontario touring the far north this week, sat down with Net News Ledger, with James Murray and with Amanda Perreault, and here is the interview. Minister Rickford, you have spent the week in Northern Ontario. What was your journey? You were in Sandy Lake, Mishkeegogaming, and in Pikangikum. What was the message up there? What were you working on?
Well, first of all, I want to thank the members of those three communities for welcoming us. It was a warm and friendly environment. We talked about issues, but we also talked about opportunities. And we had a tremendous opportunity not just to meet with leadership in those three communities, but the Ontario Works programs. I was accompanied by Minister Smith, the Minister for Children, Community and Social Services. They have a prominent footprint in communities across Northern Ontario, and he was delighted to visit them. It was his first time in isolated communities, so we had a chance to spend some quality time there. And for me, as you may know, a bit of a homecoming, especially when it comes to Pikangikum and Mishkeegogaming. I spent a couple of years in each of those locations as a nurse back in the day, so a lot of friends and some people I would call family reunited and having some fellowship, so it was great.
And a broadband internet expansion program for Mish.
Yeah, I was happy to announce through the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund 2 200-meter towers in cooperation with KNET that provides a great service to communities across the north, but Mishkeegogaming had identified a need for a stronger signal and bandwidth, so that we're putting that in place, and they were tremendously pleased with that. The chief said, we forget that sometimes when there's a lot of pressure and high use, the service can be compromised, and that precludes business opportunities and some important work by and out of the administrative functions in various parts of the community.
Shifting down into Treaty 3 territory.
Yes.
There's some land claims in Kukuchiching and Pikangikum. What's happening there? What can you update us?
Well, some of those are obviously well underway, and I'm not going to wade into the substantive elements of it. I'm generally satisfied with the way that the negotiations are going. We're committed to continuing to settle these claims and move forward. We've done that in a couple of high-profile instances in other parts of the province, most notably the Williams Treaty, which I was involved with federally. We think that if we can, settle these claims in a timely manner, which would be a distinction from the previous government, the relationships are enhanced, and we can talk about new opportunities moving forward.
Ring of Fire is always a concern, always an issue. What can you update our readers and viewers?
We're very, very excited about this. Look, I've spent the last year and a half and now as a provincial minister committing to the communities to a process. We dismantled the regional framework and committed to work with the communities one-on-one. That's what they asked to do. Focused on what a provincial government and hopefully what the federal government would conceive of this project as being, and that is creating the right conditions. Premier Ford always talks about the fact that governments don't create jobs, they create the conditions for those. Similarly, we don't build mines. We create the conditions for communities to have economic, social, and health prosperity. And so we believe that working with the communities on moving ahead with environmental assessments and ultimately building a corridor, I've referred to it as a corridor to prosperity, but I think we're working with the communities to come up with a new innovative brand for what they see this will be, ultimately access for their communities to move north and south on a safe road. And we've made great strides in those regards, and I'll have more to say about that in the very near future.
Today's announcement with buses and transportation for the north. What's that going to mean for a lot of the First Nation communities as this continues to grow?
Look, let's talk about all of Northern Ontario for just a moment. This is about Indigenous communities and municipalities, small towns, many instances off of the main Trans-Canada Highway, who deserve to have access to an integrated inter-community bus service. And that's what today was all about. We celebrate Ontario Northland's bus service coming to Thunder Bay. And we believe moving parts beyond, working with private carriers to ensure that people can move to all parts of Northern Ontario, and in particular Northwestern Ontario moving forward. So it's an extraordinary opportunity. We all rely on a bus service. I've taken the Greyhound in years gone by. We saw that service dwindle down to nothing, even when they were running in the last year or so once a day. The Pan-Canadian route effectively left very few seats for people in Northern Ontario to travel, Northwestern Ontario to travel east or west. So today marks a commitment to ensure that the people of Northwestern Ontario experience what the folks in Northeastern Ontario have had access to for, as we found out, almost 118 years. And in 2020, we'll start to experience a better bus service for all of us.
Excellent.
The announcement was made about the jail, about over-incarceration is such a huge concern and is such a huge issue, especially when it comes to the mental health of Indigenous people after the residential school and now the child welfare. What is happening with treatment programs and with the over-incarceration of our badly needed jail?
Well, look, the new correction facility in Thunder Bay that's coming on board is only part of the solution. This is not. The objective here is not focused on incarceration. There are instances where that's an appropriate piece, but we want to be, as a government, we want to ensure that people have access to services so that they can have alternatives, the system itself and the individual, to custody. We're committed to a justice center out in Kenora that we intend to implement to reduce the number of offenders that ultimately would have to be incarcerated. We also want to improve the facilities, the conditions, and the programs and services in those facilities. And as you point out, to provide services before and after for offenders. So I know in Kenora alone, we're moving towards a 30-bed on-site mental health and addictions treatment facility, and we have an after-bail care program coming on board with living accommodations for people discharged from a correctional facility that they can access and hopefully get started out on the right foot. So this is not just about a correctional facility and improving the conditions therein, but also a broader strategy to hopefully, and as I've heard Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler and our Grand Chief at Treaty 3, Francis, has said to hopefully avoid incarceration at every instant possible. Thank you, Miigwech. All right.
If you found this video helpful, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share this video, and keep up to date on what's going on.